Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us this evening. My name is Emma. I use she, her pronouns, and I'm one of our events coordinators here at Shelf Life Books. We are very excited to be hosting the launch of Upfront by Ken Rivard. We are gathered in celebration in Mohkinstsis on the lands of the Treaty 7 people, including the Blackfoot from Siksika, Gaina and Bagani, the Diné Sarsi from Tsuut'ina, and the Stoney Nakoda from Morley, the Bearspaw, Chiniki, and Goodstoney First Nation. We also walk in the footsteps of the Métis people from Region 3. Métis Nation albums are available through the hallway to your right, and there are some refreshments on that back counter. I think most of you have picked up your copy of Upfront already, but if you have not, there's plenty more by the till, and for the folks joining us online, you can also grab a copy through our web store. I'm going to introduce our participant and then hand things over. Ken Rivard is the author of 12 books. His writing has appeared in many regional and national publications, have been nominated or were finalists for such awards as Canada's Relit Book Award and the Writers Guild of Alberta, City of Calgary W.O. Mitchell Book Prize. He also has worked as the writer-in-residence for both the Writers Guild of Alberta, Strawberry Creek, and for all of Calgary at the Calgary Public Library. Recently, Ken had the honor to work as a writing mentor for the Writers Guild of Alberta Writing Mentor, kenrivard.ca. Please welcome Ken Rivard.
Thank you. Oh boy, I'd like to thank each and every one of you for just coming here tonight. Good to see you. Hello to everybody. I'd like to thank the Shelf Life Books for hosting, and especially to June and Emma tonight for organizing everything. And distributed to bookstores in Canada, including Chapters Indigo in the USA at Barnes & Noble. The plan for tonight is Upfront is a series of 500-word stories. It's called flash fiction. It's probably been around since the Old Testament, if you were to go all the way back. It's a short way to tell a story. Half the book here is about, and the other half is about 17 and 18-year-olds. So there's a huge contrast you're going to notice tonight. And if you'd like to follow along, I'll tell you where I'm at so you can follow with me. Audience members like to do that when I've given readings here and across Canada. So it's up to you. If you just want to listen, that's fine too. The plan is I'll read, as I said from the beginning and the end, stories. And at the end, we'll have a question and answer period. If you have any questions you'd like to ask, feel free. I'll try to be open and honest with you about answers as best I can. If I can't answer it, I'll say so. And then afterwards, after the question and answer period, if there are anybody in the audience, one or two people who would like to discuss what they heard tonight, you can preface your comments with, I really like this, but, or I wonder about why you did this or why you did that, and I wonder how you did that. Could be responses that could be prefaced with those words, or any words that you want, really. We're not in school anymore here. We're here to tell a story and have some fun, and talk to a real writer, okay? That's what we're here for tonight. First story, a 13-year-old girl unload her purse on a table, and it's like a mound of everything from pens to combs to everything, Kleenex, tissues, packages of gum, everything under the sun. And this story is about a girl looking for one item, her lipstick, all right? And she's 12 or 13. If you'd like to follow along, if not, that's fine. Okay. Lipstick. She lives to vibrate. The short, plump, blue-eyed girl dressed in rose-colored pants and blouse quivers and shakes when she enters a room as if her body had disappeared beneath her excess weight. Her iPod's going full blast, and her huge purse, which is a mound of green, the purse opens to a bowl full of October fields. Pens and combs battle each other. Orange and white tissues explode into a flurry of Halloween. Keys rattle, a wallet thumps onto the floor, a purple comb appears. A smaller orange comb follows. She digs and digs as pieces from her life flutter into the air. Then she stops after finding her cell phone under 3 packs. The girl calls home and asks someone that burning question, "Where is it?" "How am I supposed to know?" a voice at the other end says. "But you always know where everything is," the girl insists. "Hey, it's your purse, not mine," the voice at the other end says. "Please check in my dresser or in the bathroom." There's a long pause as the girl moves her cell phone from one ear to another, and the fingers on her free hand tap, tap, tap on her. "Your maid? Try the living room and the kitchen, will you please?" Okay, hang on." Moments later, the voice at the other end returns and says, "No luck." "I can't talk without it," the girl says into her cell phone. "I can hardly breathe either." "What do you think you're doing now?" asks the voice at the other end. "I'm not going to make it without my lipstick." "Come on, look harder," the other voice answers. Then the girl comes a heap of items from one of those shopping mall vending machines. Slowly, she picks her way through everything on her desk, and next to the corrugated shirt sleeves of a hunchback apple tree, she finds her lipstick. "Got it," she yells into her cell phone. "Hello? Hello?" A voice on the intercom blurts out the singing of the national anthem, the song coming from a long, hollow tube, and the day begins. I really like images and the idea of a hunchback apple tree. I watch people unload their purses sometimes, and there's pens bent this way, items, all kinds of things, and it looks like a hunchback apple tree in October. I really like images and stuff. Anyway, so the next story is kind of, and what could happen if they dance too close to the line? There's usually a warning line if you go down into a subway. Do not come close to this line. Do not cross this line. And this particular story is called Subway Boys.
What page, Ken?
It's on page 32. If you want to follow. As if the sun suddenly dropped from the sky, the voice up front loses itself after hearing what happened. At the end of the day, war whoops, laughing, scampering, and shouting suddenly all become blurs, and new noises as one by one, bodies stuff through the turnstiles. On the other side, they wait for one another and then let the escalator bring them down to the platform. All are supposed to come to a full stop and the doors whoosh open. However, 2 boys dance back and forth across the yellow line. The first boy has dark brown hair and is much taller than his friend, whose hair is an explosion of night. The skin on his face is a perfect cloud white. The second boy is a head shorter and dressed in denim, has pasty skin craving sun. Both boys dance the tracks below as if the lines of steel dare them to do something. Then the sound of a coming subway can be heard from the tunnel to the left. A man's voice yells out, "Get back behind that yellow line or you'll get hurt or maybe killed." "No way, I'll never die," the dark-haired boy shouts back. The dark-haired boy remembers a story that the voice up front had read earlier that day, and believe it or not, brave. As the sound of the oncoming train gets louder, the boys increase the speed of their dance, zipping back and forth across the yellow line. The 2 daredevils wave towards the tunnel as if ready for any challenge. Just as the spotlight on the first car becomes a glare, one of the boys sticks out his arm, fingers stretched to see if he can touch the passing blue car, bravado, and jumps back. As the subway car zooms by, there is a muffled scream and bloodied fingers float through the air, fleshy digits going nowhere. People wince and duck at the same time. A few wipe away drops of blood from their faces and clothing. Several onlookers rush over to the boy now rolling back and forth on the yellow line and screaming the skin off his face for help. Others stand stunned and several drop their backpacks and bags. The subway car screeched to a stop so suddenly passengers inside are thrown to the floor. Doors open, people crawl out, the driver calls for help. One woman carrying a Hudson Bay shopping bag removes her jacket, rolls it up and slips it under the injured boy's head, quickly removing his own band. Then the dark-haired boy faints his head limp by his right shoulder, a drop bag of fruit. Let us through, a paramedic yells. Please stop the bleeding, someone shouts. Before long, the boy is strapped to a stretcher and then carried quickly up the escalator. The man who tried to warn the boys follows closely behind. Commuters on the moving steel steps following the stretcher gasps and mutters all the way to the exit. Something about never warning anyone again, and his words burst through the doorway into the late afternoon sky like lost subway dust. As if the sun suddenly dropped from the sky, the voice up front loses itself after hearing what happened. The voice up front could be a teacher, it could be an adult. So this next story, it's this little girl. There's a dance at the school, and she comes to school the day of the dance, and there's an increased size. Her chest has suddenly gotten bigger, and so students in the class can't figure out how come she's getting ready for this dance, but her chest is suddenly growing overnight. And this story is on page 36, if you want to follow. And it's funny about how people 12 and 13, come to their, I don't know, how do you learn about sexuality, how your body changes, how you grow. And I remember a story before I read this. This 12 or 13-year-old girl, it wasn't a girlfriend, it was just sort of a friend. And she got caught in a swing at a park. It was a special kind of a swing, and couldn't get her out. She was stuck in this swing, and it was locked at the waist right here. So I had to call the fire department, and the firemen show up with the, what do they call those things, the claws of death, or
Jaws of life.
What's it called, the jaws of life? So they get, the fireman looks and says, let me fiddle with this. Okay, I'll fix it, fine, And then everything's fine. And about a year and a half later, this boy's mother, this guy, finds out that he needs to learn about sex really quickly. He's a little older now and he should learn. So she opens her door and she has a book called All About My Body and just throws it on his bed and leaves. And about 2 years later, the same mother is getting really concerned about her son. What did you know about all the stuff that goes on when you're an adolescent, So she opens his bedroom door again and throws 2 boxes of condoms onto his bed, And so the poor kid, he's about 17 now, and people ask him, they say, well, look, how did you learn about sex? How did you learn about? And he said, well, anyway, sometimes I can tell jokes, sometimes I'm horrible at it. I give away the punch. He suddenly comes into class looking a little bigger than she normally does on her chest. Right, look at me, she replies, look at me. On the morning of the school dance, she struts into the room with a brand new chest. Even her yellow blouse is not used to the stretching and the buttoned strain like tiny weightlifting faces. But the girl stares straight ahead, holding her head high and maintaining her rehearsed smile. One by one, other students notice that something is different about her. One boy points to the girl's face and circles his mouth with an index finger as if to see her own hair, and fans her fingers across back and forth from her own ears and over her head, as if someone now has miracle hair. Another points to the girl's eyes and nods her head while tapping on her own eyebrows. No one says anything about the girl's chest because maybe her sudden new breasts are like twin sisters needing time to get somewhere on their own. Gradually, ever so gradually, stares straight ahead. More and more people notice something. One student brings his hand to his mouth to hide his snickering, and that reaction spreads to other boys. The girls look everywhere but at the fallen breast. A couple of other girls send text messages to the girl with the fallen breast. Another girl slips her a written note. The room is uneasy. The voice up front attributes. Then the girl notices her own fallen breast and tissue hanging as a shirt tail at her waist, her face a torch of apple red. She raises her arms and folds them at her chest The tissue clump falls to the floor and is kicked from one desk to the next until the boy picks it up, examines it, and then uses it to blow his nose. With her arms still at her chest, the girl holds a washroom. Sure, go ahead, the voice up front replies, and the girl stands with her arms glued to her chest and quickly struts out of the room. Later, when she returns, the girl still has her arms folded at her chest, and everyone waits for her to drop her arms. I'm not feeling so well, she whispers to the voice up front. Do you need to go see the school nurse, the voice up front asks. No, it's more than that, the girl replies. In school. Yeah, I better call my mom at her office and tell her I'm coming home because I'm sick. Too bad. Is there anything I can do to help? Asked the voice up front, its words like velvet. Yes, there is. If anyone asks, can you say that I was not feeling right? Of course. Unfortunately, you will miss the dance after school. Yeah, I was so ready for the dance, it says. Right, she exhaled, her breathing a slow leak of beauty. And the reason that it's funny about how that story got written, the ideas for writing for this book came from a ton of places. But I love the awkwardness of human beings. One of the reasons I write, when Micheline, my wife, and I travel, I'm always watching and just watching how people interact, how they tease each other. I'm always intrigued by people, and Micheline says, what are you doing? I said, I'm just watching people, how they greet each other and laugh together. Because people in Copenhagen don't laugh the same way as they do in Dublin. You know, it's a different world. So it's just, I love that stuff. I just eat it up. And it always has been since I've been a boy, actually. That's probably why I became a writer. The next story is something that's always fascinated me. For about almost a decade, I was a prof or assistant, whatever you want to call us. I taught at Mount Royal University, and I just loved it. Asked one day, and she says, "Can I come with you?" I said, "Sure." I was going to my car, and she was from Mexico City and had a very, very thick accent. And she says, "Do you think I'm smart because I have a thick accent like this?" And I thought, this I got to write about. So she's telling me about her life from Mexico City coming to Calgary. And so I took that story and turned it into a 12 or 13-year-old story. If you would like to follow. You couldn't understand me a couple of years ago, she says. Really? The voice up front says. You sound good to me. When I came here from Mexico City, I was put into those English as a second language classes. I took class after class of ESL and even started doing some reading and writing. But I wanted most was to lose my Mexican accent. I watched TV as much as I could, but then I started sounding like I was a regular in a sitcom or a contestant on a quiz show, but with a thick accent. People told me that life was not TV with an accent. And as you can tell, I still sound like someone from another place. So, thank you. But my uncle, who has been here for a long time, says I still sound as if I just arrived in the trunk of a car a few nights ago. You know how some people joke about immigrants, eh? Well, my uncle now thinks he is way better than any of us, and he comes from Mexico City too. We were all immigrants at one time or another, answers the voice up front. But it's more than that, the girl says. What more is there? When some people hear me, they think I'm stupid, too, because of my accent. But I'm not. True. But do I sound dumb? No, not at all. The other day, another person asked if anyone knew how a bird and a tree were the same. Most people said that a bird lives in the tree. I said with a quiet confidence. Why didn't you answer? Inquires a voice up front. I did not want to sound like I had nothing but a vast arid region between my ears. That other person must have noticed, and she looked straight at me. Everyone grew quiet. In a loud Mexican English voice, I said, the bird and the tree are both alive. Makes sense. The other person said that too, and everybody clapped for me, the girl added. Great. What you did is called abstract reasoning. And smart. Well, good. That proves you really are smart, right? Right. Ask your uncle about his own accent, the voice up front offers. Then what, the girl asked, and her watered up eyes. This one is about a boy. I'll tell you where, you can ask the questions later where the ideas come from. They come from all kinds of places. I mentioned last time I had a book launch that when I watch people with cameras and they take pictures, for example, they do click, but my brain goes click, 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 and all these pictures get stored away somehow. I don't know how that started. It started when I was a boy, when I was probably 10 or 12 years old. It probably helped me become a writer, actually. How do you explain that process? I don't know. Anyhow, this next story called Dirt Road, tries to show 14 or 14, and this boy is telling me that walking along a dirt road, there's a lot of rocks, there's dirt, there's dust, there's holes in the ground. You know, when you're walking down a dirt road, it's kind of mucky, and you'll see what happens. Puberty for him is walking along a dirt road. Simple. I need a way to find a way off my dirt.
What page, Ken?
Page 67.
Oh, sorry.
67.
Thank you.
Quite slim and tall for his age, the boy looks older, but yet hoped all the pimples and changes would start later, much later. Yes, the boy's skin belongs on the bones of someone else. His mind is sharp, though. The boy remembers the first meeting, but he was 4. So many relatives squeezed his cheeks and picked him up in their arms. He especially hated the cheek grabbing, the pinching pain. Eventually, his sore cheeks pushed him back into himself, and he found ways to avoid face-to-face contact with relatives. He hid mostly behind his mother and sometimes his father, or the boy pretended to be busily building something. The relatives ignored his avoidance strategies and tried other ways like hugging, kissing, and pats on the head. That boy is special, one aunt mentioned after a Thanksgiving gathering. Yeah, people will pay attention to him, said an uncle last Christmas. Wait till he becomes a real teenager, a much older cousin announced to everyone after one of the boys' birthday parties. There'll be no stop. He remembers every word that was ever said about him since he was 4 years of age. And time alone on that dirt road. However, there are days when he wishes his memory was porous. Only now is he starting to care so much. For some reason, the boy trusts the voice up front because the voice seems unconcerned about being special, having blemishes, or excessive height, or hearing the voice talk about being extra tall and bony for its age, and the start of a bad complexion when it was 13. And the voice up front also mentioned that it felt like being lost on a lonely road, a dirt road. It is strange. You know, I felt like that kid who was born to not fit in anywhere. My face even looked like a dirt road. My skin was not my own, while discussing the story they had read about a homeless boy. Some of my buddies felt the same way, but I didn't find out until we were all much older. When the class ends, and everyone except the boy moves on to the next room, the voice up front looks up and says, "Oh, yeah, you're still here. Is there something you want to discuss?" "Kinda," the boy says. "What can I do for you?" the voice up front asks. Okay, so that the awkwardness of being an early teenager and stuff that goes on, and sometimes it's different for everybody, I guess. Some of us, it's funny when I was teaching. Good story for you. I was teaching university for a while. I did a story once, and I asked the students. I said, "How many of you know what maturity means? What growing up? What does it mean to be grown up?" So I told them when I was a kid, the parameters of adolescence were between 12 and 18. Suddenly at 18 or around that age, you sort of knew we were supposed to be doing with your life. So then I found out from my students that they're actually plus. It takes longer for people to grow up. You know? So I wrote a story, or I wrote a letter to the Calgary Herald about it just for fun. I don't write letters to editors to get published in newspapers, but this one they published it about the parameters of adolescence, why it takes longer for people to grow up. And I was stunned because that wasn't my intent at all. It was just to blow off a little steam and show them that I did. So that was the fun part of it. Anyway, this next one, now we're getting into older students. And this, I'll tell you the page in a second here. Let me catch my way, find out where am I here. Here we go. Yeah, okay. Just a second here. There we go. What is it? Sorry about that. Just hold on a second. Okay, here it is. This one's called Rooftops, and this was written when I wrote the initial part of this idea came from observing. Just watch students in different situations in the lab. This one takes place in the lab, and there were big, big windows in the lab. And this student was staring out the window. This was happening in a school in Montreal a long time ago. And I don't know if you've ever watched the life on the rooftop. What goes on a rooftop? So I imagined I was that student. I don't want to watch this biology session going on. I want to watch the rooftops. Okay, I'm pretending I'm a 16 or 17-year-old looking at rooftops. Okay, it's on page 91. For anyone who'd like to follow. Okay, life on a roof has its own science. The boy who is wider than he is taller is ready on his stool in the biology lab and waits patiently for directions from the voice up front. TV antennas and TV satellite dishes. A tall, angular woman on the closest rooftop hangs laundry on a gray clothesline. She explodes with waving when she sees the boy looking in her direction, but she may also be waving at a neighbor on another rooftop. Meanwhile, the voice up front is still not ready, but tells everyone, be prepared to carefully observe. The boy lets his thoughts roll in red jeans. The hazy sky clears and the mid-morning sun suddenly shoots its rays between the legs of the jeans, and the boy on the stool smiles at the power of it all. Flinging her hands up to the sky as if throwing sunlight back to the sun, the woman then begins sorting through more wet laundry in her basket. Right now, the boy may be unsure. Over on the second rooftop, pigeons fly into a roost as a completely bald man with a full white beard applauds at a return while sitting just below the roost. Then the bearded man lights up his pipe and the smoke has little chance to form anything. Not even a story about him because the wind blows it all away so quickly. Standing tall, he speaks to his birds under a canopy of bright sky. Burning even more towards the window and almost slipping off the stool, the boy in the biology lab might be imagining himself on that roof with the man, the birds, and their erratic dialogues. On the third roof, so many TV antennas of various sizes and length stand as clumps of bony scarecrows, and this roof belongs to them only. Some of their broken and twisted arms almost cross over each other, but they tell us an open story about their past. The boy in the lab stool listens to this tale coming from the black tar pages of the roof. In the story, he is shown how to stand still when watching and listening to life on the roof. Two of the antennas seem to want to hold hands, but are hesitant because of several TV satellite dishes perched on one side of the roof, eyeing their every move. Because they're nothing more than aluminum ribs taking up space. What looks like a black and white striped cat runs along the tin edge of the second roof where the pigeons are. It stops quickly to have a second and third look at the pigeon roost. The man with the white beard flings a few roof pebbles at the cat, and the animal is swallowed up by sunlight. Right then, the voice up front microscopes. Write down exactly what you see. Can I imagine something too? The boy asked. Of course, but start with what's in front of you. Sure. Is there anything else? I'll let you know, replies the boy. Life on a roof has its own science. Okay. The discussions happen. That's probably my own cell phone. I forgot to turn it off. Brilliant, eh? That's just a distraction for the audience here. Anyhow, sometimes heavy-duty discussions happen with 17 and 18-year-olds. And this is a discussion about whether God exists or not. And I thought, oh, be careful with this, Ken, when you're writing about it. People have their own sensibilities about this idea of God, but let's see what happens here today. There's that expression when they're frustrated and say, oh, for God's sake. Okay. I can breathe better already, the boy says. Looking over the room, the voice up front recalls a group of Germans playing chess on the Costa del Sol beach by the Mediterranean Sea. This is page 117, by the way. Sorry. I'll start again. I can breathe better already, the boy says. Looking over the room, the voice up front recalls the Mediterranean Sea. He remembers them vividly from a summer trip to Spain. The Germans did not laugh very much, but when they did, their howling blew through the sunlight and exploded over the sea like breakers breaking. Between chess moves, each pair of players kept gesturing toward the sky, the water, and to bathers around them, as if they were trying to prove the existence of something, and the chess game itself was simply an excuse to find this proof. Does God exist? The voice up front asked, after freeing itself of its Spanish memory. Everyone is already paired up and ready to debate. An angling boy in a pink shirt raises both of his hands and says, conscience and submission. What do you ask his partner, a stern-looking girl who keeps pushing her eyeglasses up her nose? I have enough guilt for a lifetime, and heard that God will punish me, so he must exist, right? Yeah, God's right here, in my notes, adds a lone sentinel rocking back and forth in his chair, and who is barely participating because of a bad head cold. No, there is no God, but if there ever was a real God, he or she would. Punishing God is made by people who go to church, says a short black-haired girl who is dressed from head to toe in white and who is a top achiever in everything. And remember, all churches are institutions, and institutions are made up of people, and people are fallible. They screw up. Great discussion, replies the voice up front. And for those of you who do believe, where would God be right now? Another boy sitting by a window and known for his probing comments exclaims, he might be a handful of sun. And the boy allows his face to be warmed by insistent fingers of sunlight. Someone else nibbling on the top of an inanimate ballpoint pen stops and says, God's got me in his arms right now, according to my mom. But my mom is sometimes full of nonsense. Her arms don't work like God's. Then where is God? The voice up front asked. And what do you think God? Long brown hair, booming voice, a beard, and dressed in an enormous white cloud. Someone else replies. No. I think God would be dressed in black, including his hood, because he likes to punish and wants to find him, and wants us to find him. Another voice states matter-of-factly. How can you say that? God is in all of us. He does not need to look like anything or anyone. A girl with too much body weight replies. I don't see a God in you, proclaims another voice. Can you see God in me? No, answers someone else. Well, I see God in me, the girl says. Hold on, everyone. God's right here, the lone boy with the bad head cold suddenly interrupts as he trumpets out the wattings of his nose into a tissue and examines closely the results of his efforts, as if God lay scattered on the softness of his world. I can breathe better already. We are going to, this is an imagined story of 17-year-olds gambling in an alleyway near a school. Okay, they're gambling with coins, flipping coins up. I just made this whole thing up, don't tell anybody. But if the story appears real to the reader, any of the stories in this book, I think I write better when I make stuff up. Don't tell anybody that. Okay. On page 128, it's called Coin Game. You know, just like real life. The voice up front is outside and walking toward the back laneway to a parking lot. There it sees 5 different hands holding, then dropping or pointing to the white arm, and looks more like the paw of a dog. The voice up front imagines the hand being tied to a leash. It remains clenched for fear of losing its remaining coins. Or perhaps it is only an intruding dog paw wanting to push aside all hands and trot among the hands with no concern for coins. Outside the cluster of other thick arm. This hand has already dropped a single coin on the ground and knows how to let go of anything. This makes the voice up front exhale slowly, seem to have no joints, are extended in a casual kind of way, as if the coin is a weight it carries around all day. The thumb on this hand is so long and thin that it seems out of place. Joints show nothing but raw bone. The third hand, bent to the left of its wrist, casually drops the last coin in its grasp. Its wrist is a small bone and distance to its elbow is short. The forearm glistens with sweat in the afternoon sunlight and almost blinds the voice up front. Because it is losing interest in the coins, this hand may want to be somewhere else. Floppy. It may belong to someone whose skin grows faster than its bones. Its size makes the voice up front examine carefully its own hands. From the knuckles to the wrist, the back of this fourth hand is a hump, slowly finger-licking itself away from the coin it left on the ground. Fading teeth marks on the wrist are still red from a possible bracelet or wristwatch taken off. The fifth hand squeezes its coin until its fingers turn red, then white. The voice up front sees the coin sticking out from a clenched fist that looks like the mouth of a puppet, and the coin is a tongue speaking its own words. This makes the voice up front move closer until the hand moves away from the center of the coin game. This is my last coin, the fifth hand's voice trails off as it leaves the back laneway. When the voice how's it played? The voice up front inquires. Take one coin from your pocket and hold it in your hand, answers the second hand. Done, replies the voice up front, reaching into its pocket and grasping a quarter. Now flip the coin into the air and call heads or tails. Let it fall to the ground, the third hand says. If your call is right, you keep all the coins in the dirt. If your call is wrong, you leave the coin in the dirt. The last one to make the correct call gets to keep all the remaining coins, the first hand says. Sooner or later, a wrong call is made, the fourth hand replies. Eventually, someone runs out of coins and leaves. You know, just like real life. This is a story about military service. And this guy's really incredible. He's quite eccentric. He stopped speaking in the fall, and somehow he got recruited into the military. He uses the pad to respond to people. And he tells people he has a problem with his throat or whatever. He makes up excuses. But the mother's worried about him, and she sees him as that last leaf on an October tree. And she's worried about something happening to him. It's called October Leaf, page 130. And I don't want to lose him like that final leaf from an October tree, she says. The woman in the doorway has eyes that grow wider as they stare at the voice up front. Then her eyes dart from side to side, almost frantic. The room is emptied. She checks over both shoulders and approaches the voice up front. You once worked with my oldest son, Jack. Can we have a chat? Sure, have a seat, says the voice up front. Jack is unfinished, the woman says. What do you mean? He joined the military and just left for the Middle East. He's only 19 and not a big talker. Yes, I remember. Maybe I have the usual single mother concern. Start up his beat up motorcycle every Friday, so the engine got turned over regularly. That should help, says the voice up front. Maybe that motorcycle will keep you both connected. Yeah, but my own engine needs turning over too, she replies, hunching her shoulders. Something tells me that my son is not done, that maybe he'll never be done. Why do you say that? I can do to complete him. Do you mean maturing? No, I realize he's still a boy in a man's skin. And I know it takes much longer for people to grow up today, she says. For sure, I read somewhere recently that the parameters of adolescence used to be between 12 and 18, and that now they can be between 12 and at least 30 or more. Seems that it has a lot to do with people being too dependent on other people, places and things, and that these same people then start demanding that their needs be met, like children. No, I think the war will take care of that. It is much more. So what part of Jack needs to be finished? He gets drained by being around people too much. Jack is a big-time introvert and completely stops talking every autumn, says a woman. What? How come? He says he becomes like that last leaf on an October tree branch. Really? And the tree buds start sprouting. How can he survive in the military? Surely he needs to do some talking, the voice up front says, its face creased with question marks. Jack carries a pad of paper and writes notes to people, saying that he has temporary vocal cord problems, the woman says. That's incredible, the voice up front replies. And the army still recruited him? Outside, the nighttime wind is that the only two people in this room have no choice but to show more compassion and understanding. And I don't want to lose him, like that final leaf from an October tree, she says.
Man.
Okay. I'd like to finish off with kind of a silly story. We can have a little fun with it. Some of the stuff is pretty serious. I need one volunteer to come up here for a moment. Someone who is unafraid to pretend to be 17 and combing your hair. Do I have anybody? Everybody in here has more hair than I do, I'm sure. Is there anybody who would be willing to come up and try this with me? All right, come on up, Peter. Attaboy. Thanks, Peter. Let's give him a hand. That's Peter. Okay, so we're 17 again. Thanks. You have a comb of your own? Okay. So you have to do what I do. We're both 17 looking in the mirror. All right, I'm trying to look cool. All of that stuff, okay? You ready? All right, no, you got to do what I do. You ready? All right, go.
Oh, cooking.
Are we cool or what? Thank you, Peter. I thought, what does a 17 and 18-year-old do in front of a mirror? All right. What does a 17 and 18-year-old do? So the last one I'm reading tonight, remember that song called Home on the Range? Everybody remember that? It's on page 77, everyone, if you'd like to follow along. It's a bit silly, it's a bit imaginary, it's a bit of everything. As the bathroom door squeaks open and closes, the hallway becomes an attentive ear. Nearly hidden behind the last marble partition for the urinal stalls by a sink, a tall man, the voice up front, enter and then washes his hands so thoroughly as if the hands are holding a secret. In his western boots, leather vest, he is a prominent dude, a cowboy at home on the range. With eyes focused on soaping his fingers and hands, the boy curls himself into the sink and stares at the noise of the rushing water swirling down the drain. Perhaps he's alone at a no longer useful for any cooking. Or maybe he prepares everything in that skillet. In his wet left hand is a metal cup of steaming coffee from which he takes a sip, and then he carefully places the cup on the corner of the sink so he can dry his hands. Is this a washroom or the range? What is this? Twice tugging paper towels from the dispenser. The boy the brown wetness. Then his fingers flip open the steel flap of the garbage can and drops it all in with the other garbage. Done. He studies himself in the mirror one more time and is dissatisfied with his hair. Out comes his comb again. He parts and pats and fluffs and puffs and combs and twists and gazes from side to side, tilting his head to the left and then palms stretching outward to the walls as if preparing to go on stage. What does he do to look and feel just right when he is alone on the prairie with no mirror, no urinals, no sink, no soap or paper towel dispensers? His comb must have a vision of its own when not stuffed into the right back pocket of his blue jeans. Maybe the boy hums his hair to sleep around the campfire. The flick, the crackling sounds of the burning wood are his only audience. Wolves try to unsettle his hair with their sudden howling, their piercing cries. Snakes swallow as much of his song as possible while ignoring the cold because it may now be thirsty for the boy's blood. And the moon remains wide open yellow and motionless no matter how off-key the boy sounds. Soon he pats his head ever so gently, but no one looks back at him. But he keeps trying to find just one mirror that works. And there it is. Just below the corner of sky, surrounded by stars, is a small black stream shining in the night. Right then the boy pulls out his comb again and stares with the parting, the patting. Starts with all this stuff, okay? The parting, the patting, the fluffing, the puffing, everything. He likes to see two thin clouds follow one another, float across the sky and almost cut the moon into slices like a lemon pie. A huge mountain in the background falls asleep in the blackness and seems comfortable with its own giant lack of pride. And the quiet wind gradually turns the pages of night, one black sheet at a time. Back in the washroom, the boy walks by the voice up front and nods politely. And never you want. We have our own washroom, but occasionally we check the washrooms as part of our job. I get it, the boy says. When the voice up front turns to watch him exit, the boy pats the comb in his back pocket, lifts the collar on his shirt as if the world were waiting to interview him in the hallway. As the bathroom door squeaks open and closes, the hallway becomes an attentive ear. Hey, some of them are a little strange, but I'm a little strange anyway. You got to be a writer, I think. If you have any questions, concerns, thoughts, anything that you want to talk about, yeah, Joe.
What's your favorite story? And which one are you most proud of?
Well, I'm actually, good question. Geez, my favorite, I was troubled.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's one in here about a guy I could have read, but anyway, but a guy whose fly is down. He's 13 years old and he's hiding it, you know, and he doesn't notice his fly is down. You know, the awkward stuff of being near 12 and 13 and stuff like that happens. But I have a lot of them. There's different sides to each story that I love. The favorite one, rule actually, it's 3 flash fiction stories about a 13-year-old boy watching his father pass away from ALS, Lou Gehrig's disease. And it's told through his eyes. And it's kind of sad. And I thought, geez, it's too sad for the audience. Maybe I'll let the audience read it, you know, find out. So I like lots of them. I like lots of the stories. I don't have any real favorites. Anybody else?
The voice up front, I find it allows you to have dialogue, creates dialogue. Because you have to, instead of everything just encased in somebody's mind, the technique of using the voice up front is allowing you to do dialogue, correct?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. It's not necessarily a teacher, too. It can be any adult, any adult that an adolescent goes to in an inner city school where it can get pretty rough sometimes, you know.
No, I just mean generally the voice,
Yeah.
terminology of the voice up front. You use
Yeah.
in a number of stories.
Yeah.
It gives you an ability then to have dialogue.
Yeah, I like dialogue a lot. I like it because it shows the story better than telling the story in a way through dialogue. You get the very strong sense of story when you hear people talk together, you know. You're going to laugh at this one. Air Canada was looking for somebody to write dialogue for some of their, their ads they have on the planes. And someone suggested me, and I said, Air Canada? You're writing for Air Canada? You got little TVs on Air Canada? I said, I can't do this. I'm not now. But anyway, that was another time, another story. Anybody else have any questions, concerns, or things?
Ideas when you observe people. Do you, like in the old days, take a piece of paper and scratch the idea down? Or do you just hold it in your head as a thought? Or do you go to your computer? What's your process?
The process of writing, kind of in
Yeah.
a way. I used to keep a notepad of ideas and try to do that way back. Well, that's another story I'll tell you about. But remember I said how my brain, I don't know why my brain works that way. I have no idea. But I take a lot of pictures at the same time and I just store them somehow. They're like images. And then I take that image, and my two favorite words of a writer is, what if? What if that happened? What if? Some of the stuff people who've worked in schools hear me say, come on, Ken, this didn't happen in a school. Or how did you make this stuff up? I say, that story works, you know. Yes.
Just as a general observation,
Sure.
being of a little longer in the tooth than some in here, I can relate to the voice being a whole bunch of different people in my life, and a lot of these things actually happening.
Way to go, really? Anyone stand out for you?
Oh, there's a number of them, but the one with the TV experience, but just the concept of the voice, going back to what being up front. You can put anybody there, your mother, your father, your sister, your
sure.
brother, your teacher.
Sure.
And
Sure.
and good on you, really nice.
Thank you. Thank you. I appreciate that.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was my big intent of writing this book, is to have not just a teacher or a guidance counselor or a principal trying to interact. I just picked a school as a setting. It could be anywhere. It could be on the street somewhere.
And by the way, the teenage years,
Pardon me?
the teenage years,
Yeah.
worst ones of my life.
Yeah, I know. Were you on a dirt road too? Did you feel that?
That road was so long.
Was it long?
I always used to say to people that us boys grow up a lot slower than you gals do. And I could never why.
Yeah, I know.
Until I got to be 18 and suddenly realized a 15-year-old girl is 18 and a 15-year-old guy is 12. And then when I got to be 18, they were illegal.
Yeah, I remember being that way too as a teenager, you know, being very shy. I was a pretty shy guy.
Very shy.
There'd be guys around me having girlfriends, and I'd be kind of shy, and I'd kind of wait. I was pretty quiet, and I was always watching, observing people around me all the time. And that started when I was a 10-year-old boy growing up in Montreal, where the rats were bigger than the dogs where I lived, and train tracks and factories. It was a wonderful childhood, actually. I don't regret one moment of it, you know. Anyway, anyone else want to say something? Yeah.
From a writer's perspective, I didn't look at the tape,
Mm-hmm.
right? Do you ever, when you're writing,
Yeah.
you know, do they all work? Or do you ever have a story and you say, I can't finish this, I can't.
Oh.
You know what I mean? Like, do you end up saying,
Sure.
you know, this is a great idea, but
Yeah.
it never really comes together for you?
Oh, I know. I'm doing that right now. I have 2 big novels that I wrote at publishers and agents right now. I'm sort of way ahead. I'm 3 books. And some of the stories are crap at first. All writers do. They write first, second drafts that are, they're not going anywhere. And then they go back and revisit it and try it again. The best advice I ever learned was to sleep on it, you know. Go back another day. Don't try to force it. If you try to force it, it sounds strained, like you're trying too hard to be a writer.
Yeah.
And it sounds that way. It sounds like you're trying to use a lot. I didn't learn to write in school or getting a master's degree at McGill. I didn't learn there how to write. I wrote on my own. And then when I was growing up, in the early 70s, I got published in these small little magazines, you know, coming out of Ontario. And one time I went down to United News. You know those, they were called United News. They sold newspapers and magazines from all over the world. And I saw the first magazine I was published in, and it was in the back. I took it and put it in the front. It was the first time you see your name in print. This was in 1971, somewhere around there, 72. So it was funny, you know, the things you do when you're first start out writing. It's great to see your name in print, and you say, wow, this is wonderful. And then you say, maybe I should try a book, and then you try other stuff, and take risks, try things out. Anybody else? Yeah. Yes. Go ahead, Bob.
I took the finish off the bathroom door with a comb and score.
Did you?
Yep.
I used to use Vaseline in my hair when I had hair.
There was a product called Score,
Yeah.
which came in a kit for every teenager.
Oh, yeah.
And it came with a comb.
Really?
So I used it until my father one day pointed out rather loudly that I had taken the finish off the bathroom door.
That's a good one. Anybody else remember things they did as a teenager or 12, 13-year-old or 17, 18-year-old? Yeah. I remember being 15 and taking a girl skating on a cold, cold night, damp night, having gloves on. And then we skated and skated, and I turned into a robot. It was frozen, a cold, damp night. And I said, what do I do next? You know, 14 or 15, I don't remember. And skating and trying to look cool, you know, with a smile. And it froze. My face was frozen. Silly things you do, right, at that age. But I tried to capture that, and I had a lot of fun writing this. Well, like Canal Watch is the difference about a canal. Observations around a canal. Michelin and I have traveled all over Europe and gone seen all kinds of canals. And this Mother Wild is the novel. It's a big, big story. All the stories in here, these two books, are essentially 500 words each. And the reason I do that, I had a professor one time who said to me, look, 50% of the you only need half the words you need that you have there. So we used to debate about that. It's a prof I had at McGill, and it was really interesting actually to talk about that way, way back. That was way before I had my first book out in 1983. So I can't believe it, 83, that's a long time ago. Yeah, wow. Anybody else? Yes?
Just wondering about venturing into YA. Difficulty. Did you face any challenges becoming a YA writer?
You see this as YA, that's a good point. It is, maybe it is. I have a couple of children's books published. One called Mama's School Flight I did very, very well. I had an agent. We had it translated into different languages, South Korean. Called The Trouble with Uncle Kevin, and I was commissioned to write it. It's a different world. People think you can write a kid's book or a young eighth just like that. But that was the hardest book I ever wrote. It was a kid's book because there's very few words, and you better make sure you're concise. And it's tricky. Before I got this agent, I remember. But no, it's I'm still writing up a storm. As I said, I have 2 big books that agents and publishers are waiting to hear. Just because I'm getting older doesn't mean I have to stop writing until I start dribbling out the side of my mouth. Maybe. Yeah. So. It gives me a passion and a purpose to wake up every day. You know, I try to go to the gym a few days a week and work out. But I always have something to look forward to, a project that I'm working on. And I taught, as I said, I taught at Mount Royal University for probably close to 10 years, just part-time. And I just loved it. And they offered me a full-time job. I said, hey, I want to write books, but I love working here. So I have a pretty good life. I have lots to be grateful for, actually. You know, I do. Anybody else? Yes, sir.
No, it's Joe. It's not sir. Do you write on a computer or a typewriter or with a pen or a pencil?
All 4 of the above. No.
Oh, do you?
No, just kidding. I write mostly on a computer, and I like those the nibs, mid-size ones. Write on a computer, and I just let myself go. The trouble with being a writer is you have a little man on your shoulder, or a woman,
Of course.
that says, you better fix that. You know, it's like a man questioning every move you make when you're a writer. And then there's another little person here, woman or man, that says, the hell with this guy, just keep writing.
Yeah.
And worry about that stuff later. You can fix that all up when you're done. Don't
Yeah.
worry. And I didn't learn to write, although in grade 6 I had a teacher one time. I got to tell you this story. It was a dark, cloudy Friday afternoon in Montreal at the time, and I was writing a story about a bear chasing in grade 6 or 7, I think it was 6. He comes by and he's looking at my work and he says, you know what? One day I'd be love to track down this guy. He's probably dead by now. But yeah, that was quite encouraging. But I didn't learn to write in school. I taught myself to write by reading tons of books and watching, paying attention to people. But I didn't learn to write in school. I didn't. I tried to teach writing sometimes, and that was fun. But anyway, that's another story.
Okay.
Anybody else would like to comment or?
I was going to say, Ken,
Go ahead, Bob.
you've demonstrated, I think, this afternoon and or this evening and what you've said about writing and the books that you have written, and I haven't read all of them, but I have about half of them,
Yeah.
that there's really no such thing as good writing. There's only good rewriting.
You wouldn't believe the editing. And people think you can write books. A couple of lawyers actually who were, yeah, they just retired, I suppose. And one in particular said, "Well, I have a story to tell." I said, "Well, that's the same thing as me saying when I retire from writing, I'm going to become a lawyer, just like that." Margaret Atwood did that in Toronto one time. She was telling me she had to. I mean, she's famous all over the world right now. And a doctor, general practitioner in the audience said, "You know, when I retire from medicine, I'm going to be a writer." And she said, "When I retire from writing, I'm going to be a doctor, like you." Just like that. And people don't realize how much it's 85% stamina, keeping your butt in the chair and not giving up. That is my formula. I learned that from a couple of mentors. Remember Field of Dreams, that movie?
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, he was my mentor, and he believed in me. And most successful people I've met in different walks of life, if they have one advocate, one person who believes in them, they'll be okay. That's just my philosophy of things. Like, maybe you guys have your own ideas about that, but I believe that. And he says, "I believe in you, and don't you stop." I mean, we all need an advocate, right? Someone who believes in us somehow. So that's what happened with me. And when I first published, I used to write poems, and I remember writing stuff in the early 70s, and I thought, "Oh my God, what am I doing writing this stuff?" I'm a big reader. My parents were big readers. We didn't have much money growing up, but not many people did back. I remember reading a lot and being alone and imagining and thinking. I grew up in a street where there was a factory in front, a factory in the back, train tracks down the street. There was no horizon. There were smokestacks. You never saw the horizon. And the street was filled with characters. We lived in this apartment building with, 1, 2, 3 floors, and they could have ended up selling dope off a motorcycle, or suddenly, like my brother went to law school. He did very well. I'm very proud of him. He's sitting back there right now tonight, and he did very well. And somehow I survived, got into teaching, did a master's degree, and what they become, I don't know. Anybody else want to talk about? If you don't want to, you know what? I'm going to be hanging around for a while. If you want to come up and you want to chat or sign the book, if I haven't signed it yet, please do come up. And you know what? Thank you.